Caesar. He seemed to get away with everything. He is a prisoner. He's one of the prisoners, but because of his ways, everybody looks up to him for, he is such a powerful person. Everybody looks up to him for scraps, for food, for things to be done. He's the like go-between man, Caesar. So in that way, he's a prisoner and lesser power by the guys, but he is more respected by the prisoners. So he has power, malleable, nonetheless. But that's how his existence is that power. So what about the rest?
Turin. So Turin.
Turin.
Turin uses his
Turin is
power
the foreman. Yes.
to get things for the others and to protect them. So to protect and to get favors for the squad.
Turin
He doesn't
was.
use it so much to get things for himself only. He does it also to protect
benefit
benefit
the
the
gang.
group. Yeah. So in that way, it really reminded me of the book I was reading 2 weeks ago. All's Quiet on the Western Front. So
Right.
actually, the whole concept of a band of brothers is very similar to how soldiers are.
Right,
And
right.
how the chief of the whatever the unit or whatever, the way he gets their rations and make sure that they stay safe. So yeah, in that case as well, they are serving the state's plan, whatever, in the war. But at the same time, their plan is always to keep each other safe, protect each other.
That's one interesting thing about Turin, because he was the longest ever. He served 2 terms, nearly 20 years. His power of getting things done is the people respected him. Prisoners actually respected him because he was the most level-headed, most experienced, and he was those. Because of him, it is because of him that the people under him got food.
They
It
got
was
food, they didn't have to go to the socialist place to
Yes.
do the work. And then he was like above them and yet one of them, and he told his story, and he got down and built the wall with them.
right. He was respected. The power was he was respected. Very good. Okay, what about the rest?
No, you see, this guy, Turin, basically was everything that the Soviet leaders were not. This is the perfect metaphor, right, to expose the inadequacies of the Soviet leaders at that time, starting with Stalin. Right? They never suffered with the people, they never came down and toyed with the people. And they actually kept whatever they could for themselves, leaving very little for the normal citizen.
If that was such, it was a powerful message.
Because the people never begrudged that he got 2 helpings or whatever, because they wanted him to be strong to protect them, but
Right.
he still filtered it down to them as well. Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't mind our leaders getting more, right?
Take care of themselves.
Unlike now, they get more and they get
Actually,
nothing.
mentioned,
They
take more and you get nothing.
Yeah, and we get
I
screwed.
mean, interesting concept. Yes, I totally agree.
John, anything? Power.
I don't know, I see like there's 2 types of power there. Like one is the power that's earned, which is through your leadership and your competence, right? The things that you are capable of doing. Because of that, you become respected. But there's also another kind of there's another kind of negative kind of power at play as well, like what the Soviets were actually doing. So it seemed like they were driven by, you can't really say that it's actually Stalin who had the power, because Stalin seems to be driven by something greater, like a greater evil, like basically the way they pick people for the camp, in fact, it was by quota actually. You don't need to do anything. It's like today, the officer had a number of quota, you just go around and just get people in, and the purpose is actually utility. So it's like everything is directed towards this bigger goal of efficiency and utility. It's like your humanity doesn't matter as long as we can reach the goal. So it's like there's something else in power. It feels like as though there's this greater, ideology that says, that everybody wants to serve it. regardless of how many people dies, because they want to make the so-called perfect world.
Is it due to economic reasons?
Well, you could. I mean, of course, it starts with like everybody's poor and all that. But if you look at it, like for example, they killed the kulaks, the farmers who are actually good. So at one point when they destroyed the rich people, so-called the higher class, there was a group of farmers who became richer because they were quite good at what they do, right? And then they thought, okay, these people are also rich, therefore if you're rich, there's a problem with you being rich. So they destroyed this group as well, and then what happened was the country actually went into deep starvation, right?
Suppression.
Yeah, so it's this idea of this whole class idea, like if you're rich, therefore you have to be bad, or there's something wrong with your class. It overlooks the fact that individuals actually matter, which is the total opposite of what Solzhenitsyn is trying to point out. He's trying to emphasize individualism, whereas because it was like a reaction towards the collectivization of the Soviet culture. So I think that's quite interesting. Yeah.
Yes, that's a very interesting point. Another point about power is if you notice that in the camp, the higher you are in the seat of your level of authority, the less you think about the people as an individual, as an emotional unit. The more you think them as numbers, a quota to be filled. In fact, the higher you are in the hierarchy, it's proven in this book that the prisoners are quota to be filled, work hours to be filled, activities. So the higher you are, the more detached you are from emotionality. That is what Gulag is. The objective of a Gulag, to take away the humanity out of the prisoner, so that those who rule them will see them as something like a statistic, something not of humanity. By that way, they can suppress you and they can control you and they can make you work. Right? And it's a different outlook. If you look at if you're looking down at the whole Gulag from the sky, you have an overview view. But if you go even higher, the centralized power of the Soviet Union was centralized, led by there was a chairman, but Stalin was doing executive, but chairman has no power anyway. So Stalin himself, his essence is in this book. In fact, Stalin his spirit is in every page of this book, but the only thing he is not mentioned. Everything you see, all the oppression, the hardship of the Gulag is literally him. It's a manifestation of him.
And the cruelty of the gods. Basically those who hold the power, the sadistic cruelty. But that point, right? So it was a criticism against the Soviet system of what you just said. But let's say now in the capitalistic system, don't say you take corporations, right? The higher up you go, it's no more the individuals who matter, they're just numbers. So you find reorganizations, trainings, mergers, let's cut 50,000 jobs, right? Because you got to increase the profits by a further 3%. And for what? Basically to pay better dividends and or increase the C-suite salaries.
Which, as you were talking, I thought of the same. I said it's not different from what we're experiencing now. Corporate leadership skills. Maybe that was one of the books that talks about leadership.
Yeah.
Don't you think about it? Because you're not supposed to be emotional. You're supposed to detach yourself. Empathy is not on the table and it's not part of the equation. For you, is to get the
work done. This is what I'm supposed to achieve. How I achieve it,
Yeah.
whether I have to be me or whatever. Because the people now, they will obey my,
Yes.
obey me.
Yeah.
Yeah, how they obey in a different language, in a different manner, not like by using force those
Yes.
days.
Yeah.
It's the same.
Yes. You know, so the criticism of a capitalistic system and the criticism of the Soviet style of communism, because communism is sort of many different style. You got on the other side, you got the Maoist style and all that, right? Or you look at the Soviet system, actually at the end of the day, what does the ordinary citizen in the US and the ordinary citizen in Russia, right? What was the difference? How much better off was the guy in the US as compared to the guy in Russia? You have the illusion of freedom. In the US, if you're a working class Joe, right? Whereas in Russia, they have the sense that they are continuously being oppressed. So was it all illusionary at the end of the day? Yeah, I suppose.
No, but to be fair also.
It's just the magnitude of what kind of food that
Yeah.
they have.
No, but to be fair, so I think in the capitalist world, you can actually see progression lah. I mean, to be fair, although it's difficult, but the fact is there are people who are from bottom who've actually gone up. But if we lived under a Soviet kind of situation, it's like the government decides who goes out and who goes up. You know?
Your progression was through the Communist Party, the membership, and then how you played your game, and you rose up through the ranks of the Communist Party, and that's how you move up.
Yeah, and you had very little control over your own destiny. Actually, it would seem. At least that's how it seems like in the Soviet stories.
Coming from a corporate world and having retired as vice president, I can speak a little bit more on how the corporate world works. And you are right, because I still remember every year when we have our meetings, there are targets to fill, you know. And one of the first questions I was asked when I was going to be promoted was, can you make the hard decisions? See, it's a tough decision, you know. So obviously you were wondering how to answer the question. See, you want the job. I mean, vice president is not, and not many Asians made it to that level in Mattel. So then the big boss told Mattel making Barbie dolls. So maybe one of these I'll give you a talk about all. Anyway, coming back to this, you know, so you see, it is. I mean, it is based on competency and stuff. But then they also want to know whether, when the time comes, are you going to be emotionally involved in the decision? You have to reduce 10% of the head count, okay? Because 10% of the head count will give you the numbers that you want. And you know, of course, I've been through a lot, but interesting point was, the boss told me, look, they used to call me Giri. If you can't make it, you've got others who can do the job. See, it's very blunt. It's very blunt. You know, there's no such thing as being sympathetic to you, whatever you. And one day he told me, you know, whatever you have done for last month, we have paid you at the end of the month.
Yeah.
See, so this new month starts. You don't talk about how great you were. So that's
Understand.
And in the Russian world, because I worked with some Russians, you know, because we were trying to open up in Moscow, and you know, and if you are in the Communist Party and you move up, in fact, the perks are better than what we will get in corporate America. You know. They've got I don't know what they call it. You know, they've got like a summer house. You know, they've got a
Dancha.
summer house, a dancha. You know, the kids can go overseas. They can get the best of the genes. So when you look at the comparisons, not bad. You know, to be a communist guy, try to struggle here as you know, try to run a factory with 3,000 workers and headaches every day. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just giving you the inputs because you know we're talking. And I think that's you mentioned. I think power also comes with position power. Where your position is. You see, people tend to respect you because in Thailand, because I worked many years in Thailand, it's very, very important. That's why you know they're so reverent to the king. I mean, anyone who's in position in a position, power comes next. But even here, you can see in the book, you know, as you say, the higher you go, The guy, they all know that guy, you know, he doesn't care for you, but he has got the power to change your life. He can remove you, he can transfer you. Power is a very interesting thing to study.
I always think power is equated to the chair. And as long as you have the chair, you have the power. The moment the chair is taken away from you, you're nobody.
And that's true.
Yeah.
But I've seen so many people from the top. I mean, I've met some of our top leaders, you know, in the airports when they were nobodies. You see, and nobody was there. I've seen them before when there was a whole entourage of guys, you know. And suddenly you know, he's carrying his own bag. I don't want to mention names, you know. And I know him personally. I said, hello, Datu, you know. Oh, I'm going for
Humble.
what happened? All, you know. Of course, he won't tell you, you know, nobody comes to see me anymore.
Humility, that's humility.
That's humanity, exactly.
But the thing,
I
yeah,
suppose the same extension doesn't matter whether you are a back row prime minister or front row prime minister. When you are in the prime minister, you call the shots.
You call the shots.
Everyone jumps. When you say jump, we all jump.
Yes, that's what he called power, you know.
Yeah.
They know.
but there's no rule in the world that exists that says that when you are high up, you have to lose your humanity. There's no rule.
No
saying
rule.
that.
There is no rule. I
But
agree.
it's
Something
the
that-
nature of man
It's the nature of man.
and women.
And
Very
you
sad.
need to break that rule in order to achieve what you are supposed to achieve.
Yeah.
There's no such rule. I agree with you totally.